What is going on YouTube? This is the Middle School Math Man. This video is going to be on dividing polynomials by monomials and binomials. So before we get started, let's just remind ourselves a monomial is something with one term. So right on the screen, if you look at numbers 1 and 2, those are dividing by monomials. They're one term. Binomials are two terms. So 3, 4, 5, and 6 on this page, those are all dividing by binomials. So we're going to start with binomials. Let's look at number 4. So for the last about 4 classes, we've been doing factoring. So, as you probably guessed, there is going to be some factoring involved in this. So if we look at the numerator, we have x squared plus 7x minus 8. So we're going to start, anytime we have a binomial as our denominator, we're going to have to do some factoring. So this is just a normal basic factoring problem. X squared plus 7x minus 8. So we need to think of two numbers that multiply to negative 8 and add to 7. So we're going to have plus 8 and minus 1. Because 8 times negative 1 is negative 8, and 8 plus a negative 1 is 7. So now you should be able to notice something. Whoops, I need an x here. Sorry about that. So we have x plus 8 times x minus 1 over x minus 1. Well, these x minus 1 over x minus 1, those cancel. Anything divided by itself, that's just 1, they cancel. So your answer is going to be x plus 8. Let's move on to number 5. First thing we should be looking for is a GCF. There is no GCF in number 5, but there is a 2 in front of the x squared. So we're going to have to do that slide and divide or grouping method, whichever one you learned. So we have x squared plus 5x minus 24. So step 1, slide the a term. Then you need to factor it. So this is going to be plus 8 minus 3. And then don't forget, we multiplied in that 2 at the start, so now we're going to divide it out. So when you factor it, we're going to get x plus 4, because 8 over 2 is 4. And then we have a fraction here, so it's going to be 2x minus 3. So I ran out of room, so I'm just going to rewrite it up here. X plus 4 times 2x minus 3, and all of that is over 2x minus 3. So as you can see, these 2x minus 3's cancel, so your answer is going to be x plus 4. Let's do one more with a binomial denominator. If we look at number 6, we have a binomial denominator, so we're going to have to factor the top. Now, when you look at the top, you should be able to see that there is no middle term. So right when you notice there's no middle term, you should think difference of squares method. So right when you see there's no middle term, all of a sudden you need to start looking for perfect squares. You also need to make sure that that sign, as you can see, is negative, is minus, because that's how we're going to get the opposite signs. So if we factor the top, the numerator, we're going to have 4x and 4x. Because remember, when we FOIL, that's what's going to give us our 16x squared. Now we need to multiply to negative 1. So we're going to have minus 1 and plus 1. Now, of course, if you want to double check and make sure that's the correct factoring method, FOIL, and then we should get exactly what we started with. All of this is over 4x plus 1. So as you can see, those cancel, and your answer is 4x minus 1. So anytime you're dividing by a binomial, you're going to have to factor the top, and then you're going to look for things that you can cancel. Let's talk about, I'm going to clear the page here. Let's talk about dividing by a monomial now. So if we look at 1 and 2, these are monomials. They're dividing by one term. So what I suggest doing is I suggest splitting this up Because what this problem is saying is it's saying do 6x divided by 3 and then do 9 divided by 3. So 6x divided by 3 is 2x plus 9 divided by 3 is 3. So that's your answer. Number 2 is a little bit more difficult, but again, I suggest splitting it up because we're about to do number 10, and that is a little bit more in depth with a lot of different things we need to do. So if we split it up, I think it's easier to just take it piece by piece. So 6 divided by negative 2 is negative 3. We just spent this whole last unit talking about exponents. So hopefully we remember that a squared divided by a is just a. And then these b's actually cancel. B divided by b, those cancel. Now we're moving on to the second part of the problem. Negative 12 divided by negative 2 is positive 6. The a's cancel, and we have 1b. Let's look at number 10. So to me, the way I'm going to rewrite it, I think it's easier if we split it up because we can just take it piece by piece like I mentioned. If you don't want to split it up, you don't really have to, but visually I think it makes it a little bit easier. So now we're just going to take it piece by piece. So this first part, we're going to get 3 x to the 5th divided by x to the 4th. That's just 1x. Then we have minus 25 divided by 5 is 5. Now, x to the 3rd divided by x to the 4th. We're going to have a negative exponent, x to the negative first power. So remember, if we have a negative exponent, if it's in the numerator, we need to kick it to the bottom, kick it to the denominator. So that's what we're going to do in this case. Lastly, we have plus 1, 5 divided by 5 is 1, x to the negative second power. Again, we can't have a negative exponent, so we're going to move that to the bottom. So our answer is going to be 1 over x squared. So we can leave it like that. So just a quick summary. Anytime we're dividing by a monomial denominator, I suggest splitting up the problem because once we get problems like number 10, to me it just seems easier if it's split up piece by piece. And then you're just going to divide. You're going to look at the exponents, things like that. The first part of the video we did dividing by a binomial, like number 8 for example. So anytime you have a binomial denominator, you're going to need to factor the top and then you're going to